before we are delving into the main topic of our events, I would like to introduce you briefly what niceshops company is and what we are made. Niceshops is an online retailer and commerce service providers that is working internationally. Our main headquarters is in Salz, and additionally, we have offices in Vienna and in Graz. But now let's take back a step of about 18 years, landing in 2006. At these times, our founders, CEO Roland Fink, started his journey in online sales, shipping nutritional supplements from the basement of his Lowe's home in Bad Gleichenberg. Since the start has been clear, niceshops is a Styrian, is a proudly Styrian company made in Austria, committed to supporting region and the local community. Of course, this investment with the incorporated with the work of our employees bring us the most success. As you imagine, we expanded our warehouse has expanded during the years, and now we are store more than 2.7 million products. We have 2.7 million products in stock. Our colleagues in our warehouse is sending 20,000 packages per day. And our IT specialist and support take care about 1.7 million customers worldwide from 150 countries and speaking 16 different languages. I would like you also to show you the core business of niceshops. Niceshops core business is based on 4 pillars. Firstly, we have traditional e-commerce, buying and selling products. We also own our own brand, our own products branded and manufactured in-house. Furthermore, we are providing e-commerce as a service, and since a couple of years, we are providing also fulfillment services for our customers and other companies. And lastly, we are engaging and invest in other business and in other companies and peoples with the goals to extend our market and to be more visible in the economy. That's all for the beginning. Thank you for listening, and if you have more questions after that, we are happy to answer you. But now, let's delve inside the main topic of today. Thank you so much.
Works. Perfect. So thank you, Walter, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Welcome also from my side to this meetup today. And yeah, we will spend the next 20-25 minutes talking about security in agile development. And yeah, my name is Daniel. I work for Condignum in Vienna as a senior security architect. And I basically, yeah, my day basically consists of finding solutions for the everyday security problems of our customers, either via our security platform or via consulting in terms of our professional services. Besides that, I also work as a lecturer at the St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences, where I teach web application security. So why is security even important? So why do we spend a whole evening now talking about security? Any ideas? Who has an idea why this could be interesting to you? Yeah. Exactly. Why? What do we hear all the time in the media? What happens like on a daily basis?
Expensive if it's not secure.
Yeah, exactly. It's super expensive if something happens. Yeah.
Oh,
Pardon?
most problem is with the fraud.
Fraud, yeah. Like ransomware is a big topic. Yeah, true. And data breaches, exactly. So basically, all of you already heard about some kinds of attacks that are happening out there in the business world, right? So if you really dig into some data and see what happened in the last years, you will find companies of all sizes, huge ones, little ones, famous ones, unknown ones. Basically, almost every organization gets breached or attacked by hackers at some point. So it's not really a question if it happens to your organization, but more a question when it eventually happens, and if you're properly prepared at this time. And I'm following now the statistics for the last 12 years, roughly, about which path attackers usually take to compromise an organization. And since I'm following this, the #1 vector is always web applications. The other stuff changes, and like the order changes all the time, but web applications was always #1. And it's actually, the percentage is even increasing. Why? Because nowadays everything is connected to the web, everything has some web interface, and the whole web infrastructure in the beginning was not designed for what it is right now. So it's really important to secure our web applications in order to safeguard our organizations from hackers. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our applications are secure, and we need to implement security best practices in our development processes. And this is what we will talk in the next 20 minutes. So when we remember back to the good old waterfall times, I think all of you are pretty much aware or familiar with the basic phases of a development lifecycle, right? So we usually have some kind of initial planning where we plan what we want to do. Then we have some requirements and design phase. We do some architecture, some UX design, well, some requirements engineering maybe. And then we start to code. There, we usually have some kind of code style guides in order to make sure that the code doesn't get too messy right from the beginning and stays like more or less pretty. Then we start testing. Usually back in the days, it was primarily manual tests. Sometimes we started a little bit of automation, but a lot of manual testing. And then we had some quality gates, the deployment, and everything went to production. So what happened at security-aware organizations was that they usually placed some penetration testing in the test phase. So the penetration test is basically a manual security verification by an expert. So somebody comes to the organization, checks your application, and the annoying thing with pen tests, as well as with all the other testing, is that they usually have some findings. And then the whole thing with deployment and production plan usually doesn't work out that well because nobody really planned for enough time for fixing those bugs, right? And the same for vulnerabilities and penetration testing findings. So what happened then? We kind of got agile, right? Or a lot of organizations. So the whole application, it's got broken down into smaller parts, and iteratively we kind of repeat the same phases again and again in order to have smaller increments and are able to test smaller parts, get them into production, and then continue developing. Yeah, so when we do that, of course, the time frame for one cycle gets a lot smaller than before. So we don't have the same amount of time to do a lot of manual testing and stuff. So what happened, basically, the focus shifted to more automated testing, and we implemented CI/CD pipelines to also enforce, like automatically enforce quality gates. And we even tried to not introduce as many bugs and problems in the right from the beginning, So we have some kind of peer reviews or even peer programming. Everybody kind of agree with that? Perfect. Of course, it's everywhere a little bit different, but this should be kind of common ground, I hope. So basically the same, what we need to do now with security, we need to apply the same principles, let's say. So we want to have a high degree of automation, especially for the verifications, because we don't have the time in each sprint to do a penetration test. This just doesn't really work out for most companies. We need some kind of standardization because those traditional quality gates vanish, and we just need to automatically standardize, ensure that our quality standards are met. And we want to introduce more know-how about security in the development teams, because especially in nowadays DevOps teams and so on, they really demand way more power than they used to have. And with more power, there comes more responsibility. And we just need to make sure that people really know what they're doing. So I will introduce you to some basic security best practices that you can apply in your development lifecycle. And the first of all is threat modeling. This will also be like one of the biggest things I will talk about. So this takes some time, so don't be afraid, not everything takes as long. So what is threat modeling? Threat modeling is a technique where you try to identify things that can go wrong in your application right in the beginning and think about how you can prevent them. So especially in Agile setup, I would suggest to do one basic initial threat model right in the beginning when you start planning your application. And then in every sprint, derive the relevant threats for your current tasks. And in the course of your development lifecycle, extend your threat model from time to time, especially when you have some big architectural changes or when you encounter some recurring problems or vulnerabilities. So what is threat modeling actually about? There are some really heavy and formal ways of doing threat models or doing threat modeling. And most people get kind of afraid of it because it seems quite heavy and time consuming, and so they don't do it at all, which is, in my opinion, the wrong approach. And it's, in my opinion, way better to start with a very easy, lightweight version, because with just a little bit of time investment, you can already get a lot of security gain for your applications. And I will give you a little example how this could look like in practice. So imagine we are creating a pizza order system. So a little application where people can order pizza. The customers can save their addresses, their personal pizza configuration, and their credit card data. And the payment is done via some external payment provider. So the easiest way of doing a lightweight threat model is now to just gather your whole team in a room around the whiteboard and do some brainstorming. And in the course of this brainstorming, you ask yourself 3 questions. The first of all is, what are we actually building? So how does this system look like? And you can start with just pointing out the sensitive data this whole system is processing. In our example, this could be, for example, the credit card data, the usernames, passwords, pizza prices, and the pizza configurations, for example. And then you start creating a diagram together. It doesn't really matter which kind of notation or tools you use for that. You can just use every kind of diagram you like. The important thing is that you do it together, basically, because then everybody is pretty much on the same page and people start to understand how this whole system should actually work and look like. So in our case, this could, for example, look like something like this. So we can see, okay, we have some anonymous visitors. They can get some public content and they can authenticate, and then they become either customers or admins, while the admins can update pizza prices and the customers can update their profiles, configure some pizzas, and order pizza. So quite a simple application. The The things I really like to use for diagrams, I will have some links on the last slide in case anybody is interested in that. You can dig deeper there. So as soon as we know what we want to build and how this should look like, we ask the second question, which is what can actually go wrong? And for this, we can just do some little brainstorming for worst case scenarios. So just thinking about, okay, what would really harm the application? What would be really bad if attackers could do there? And in order to structure your thoughts a little bit, you can use the STRIDE methodology from Microsoft, which is basically just an abbreviation for 6 categories of threats, where the S stands for spoofing, which means threats where some attacker can impersonate somebody. In our example, somebody could, for example, log in as another customer and order free pizza. Tampering would mean that somebody can manipulate something. So for example, a competitor would be able to increase our pizza prices and kick us out of business. Or a customer modifies pizza prices to 0 and just gets free pizza. Both not nice. Repudiation is the category which means that somebody is able to do something and deny it afterwards, and we cannot prove them wrong. So in our example, somebody would order a pizza, and when it arrives at the door, he says, no, I never ordered that. But since it's already here, I will take it, free of charge, of course. And we cannot prove that he really ordered it. So if we don't have proper log files, for example, and we can prove that this order really happened, we have a problem. Information disclosure, for example, credit card data could get leaked. Denial of service means that our application is not available and people cannot order pizza. And you all know how people are when they get angry, not good. And elevation of privileges could mean that, for example, somebody gets admin privileges. So with a little brainstorming in these categories, you can get an idea of what could go wrong in your application and kind of sharpen the mind of the whole team in regards of security. So this already gives you a big security impact because everybody kind of has this in mind when they develop and design the application. And then, of course, number 3, we think about what can we actually do against those threat scenarios. And there I can really recommend you the OWASP ASVS. The OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, is an open organization who deals with application security topics, and they publish all their results for free in the internet, so you can use all their publications. I think Walter will afterwards also show one of them. And the Application Security Verification Standard, the ASVS, is basically a huge catalog of very detailed security requirements for all different aspects of application development. So if you, for example, have some spoofing threats identified so that somebody can kind of circumvent authentication, then you can just check the authentication chapter of the OWASP ASVS, and you will find a very comprehensive list of detailed security requirements that tell you how exactly you can design and implement a secure authentication and authorization mechanism, which is pretty nice for a free resource. So a big recommendation here to check this out, actually. Yeah, and also it is an option nowadays to include modern AI technologies, like for example, ChatGPT in the easiest case, to help you with that. Of course, disclaimer, this will not be perfect. Like everything this thing produces, it's not perfect. It doesn't really know what it's talking about, but usually it gives you a pretty good idea in the direction which you should go in. So you can really use it as one source of input to kind of get your to get your imagination going, and so you get a good starting point. But take it with a grain of salt. So I would suggest in the beginning, you just give it a lot of details about your whole system and how it works, and then shape the prompt according to some best practices. You can check out this link. There are like a few rules which tell you how to shape a ChatGPT prompt in a way that you get the best results out of it. It's really interesting. For example, to tell it exactly in which role to behave to and what format it should produce and stuff like that. So big recommendation to check those rules out. And then you can go on and for every sprint, basically, tell it which current tasks you have or which new features you want to implement and to derive some threads. I can also show you some little example here. I did this for our little thread model from before. Oh, where is it? Here. So I just told it, okay, please act as a cybersecurity professional who is a master in threat modeling. And then I explained a little bit about the application, which users it uses, and how it works. Then I also told it some details, some technical details, how it's hosted and which technologies are used and stuff like that. And then I gave it quite detailed instructions what kind of output I want to have. Like I want a report with a management summary, some worst case scenarios regarding to Stride, and I want a table, a markdown table with some specific columns and some countermeasures. And then you get exactly this. You get some really nice worst case scenarios, pretty much the same as that we had in our little thread model before. Oops. And then you get a nice table with the different threats, the impact, the risk, and what to do against it. And afterwards, come on, doesn't work. And afterwards, even some nice coding examples how to basically fix or prevent those threats. And then, for example, in the next sprint, so this could be like the basic threat model in the beginning. And then I just told it, okay, we would now like to extend our system for a function to share pizza configurations with other users. So some share with friends function. Please derive threads for this new use cases. And then again, I get very specific threads for this specific feature and can work with that. So I would suggest you just to try it out, give it a try. Usually it gives you like a good starting point, but of course, don't completely rely on it because basically AI still doesn't really know what it's talking about, but it goes in a good direction. Good. So much about threat modeling. Then, as I said already in the beginning, know-how is a huge topic. So we are already used to give our whole team specific trainings for technical stuff. So when it comes to new technologies, new programming languages and stuff like that. So everybody receives training in this regards. But rarely developers get also training in security matters. And in my opinion, it would be really important that everybody who writes code also gets some fundamental basic training in secure coding and security practices. And there are a lot of companies out there who provide those trainings. So I can really recommend just some basic training to get the fundamentals right. It can really help a lot. And also, what can really help companies is to define security champions in the development teams. So just somebody who is maybe already interested in the security topics to be defined as the security champion or security lead or something in this team. Because, you know, if for the topic nobody is responsible for, then nobody does it, right? So you always need somebody who kind of has the head for that. And I will come back to this role in the next few practices. When we start coding, as well as we have some code style guides in order to make sure that our code doesn't get too messy, we also need some secure coding guides in order to make sure that it stays safe. So the goal is to have some kind of checklist to ensure all the security coding best practices during development, because it's just super hard to remember everything and not forget everything. So a checklist is always a good thing to have for that. Especially in an Agile setup, I would again, similar to the threat model, start with creating one initial security coding guideline right in the beginning. You can derive that from either some company standards, if you have some, or from public standards, as the application security verification standard, the ASVS, which I showed you before. This is a great framework which you can use to pick those requirements out that are relevant for you. And you can, of course, also get an expert to help you with that. And also a very smart idea would be to use the threat model that you already did as an input for the coding guideline. And then in each sprint, when you start coding, you can select the relevant chapters which are currently relevant for your tasks and use them as a checklist. And of course, also in the course of your development, from time to time, you need to extend this guideline and reevaluate it probably, especially after big architectural changes and when you encounter reoccurring problems or vulnerabilities. How do we encounter those vulnerabilities? We need some kind of security verifications. And here we have a few different options, basically. And in best case, we combine them in some way. So on the one hand, we have the option to do secure code reviews. Basically, as we already do peer reviews usually, we should also include some security checks at these peer reviews. So when doing a peer review, also checking the code guideline, basically if all these best practices are followed. And especially for critical code parts, the security champion could be the right person to do these reviews, for example. And it's also a very good idea to make those mandatory, for example, with pull requests or something like this. Then we can do security scans. So security scans are basically automatic security verifications or vulnerability checks. And since they're automatic, they are quite prone to false positives. So whenever you get some tool for security scans, you always need to have some person in the team who also checks those findings and results for false positives or if they're really valid. And again, the security champion could be the right person for that, for example. There are different categories of those tools. So you have static application security testing tools, which basically scan your source code. You have dynamic ones that scan your application at runtime. And you have the combination, which is called interactive application security testing tools. And when you Google for those terms, you will find the most prominent vendors in this area. And you can basically just compare them and choose the one that fits your needs the best. A very important, if not even the most important thing of all, is actually dependency checks. So all our applications have some kind of third-party libraries and frameworks and components, right? So nobody really writes an application from scratch on their own, just maybe in military or really healthcare critical things sometimes, but very rare. So this is completely okay. We don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time, but we need to be aware that if we include foreign code in our applications, and this foreign code has vulnerabilities, then we also include those vulnerabilities. So we need to be, first of all, aware of which libraries we actually have in our application, and we need to check if those libraries and components have some publicly known vulnerabilities. And this is not really possible to do by hand, and that's why there are a lot of tools that help you with that. So if you search for dependency checks, you will get a list basically of all the relevant tools for that. And there are free ones as well as paid ones. But I would really, if you're not doing this already in your team, I would really recommend to introduce that, because this is this will easily increase the security of your application a lot. Then, especially since those modern container platforms are introduced, anomaly detection is also a big thing. So you can basically install agents on your container platforms that learn how your containers usually behave. And if there is some anomaly because there are attacks going on or something like this, then they warn you. So this is specific or usually used in container environments. And last but not least, the pen tests, which I already talked about in the beginning, which are basically manual security checks by some security experts. Either you have some pen testing team in your company, or you usually get some external help for that. And they are very, very effective because there's really a human sitting there checking your application from one end to the other. You will get really good results from that. But since it's manual, or mostly manual, it's also very heavy in time and resources. So you need to choose wisely when and how often you do that. And a good rule of thumb when you should do pen tests is like after establishing your basic architecture, before the first go live of your application, and when you have some really big architectural changes. For example, you include some new data stores, you include some new technologies, or you change your logic for authentication, authorization. These are all like good points where it's maybe time for a pen test. And yeah, if you do like a smart combination of those verification types, then you usually get the best result and the best security gain. So we have code reviews, security scans, dependency checks, anomaly detection. And the last thing I want to mention again, we already had in the beginning, but also in the security world, the enforcement of certain quality gates with CI/CD pipelines is a really big topic because when things are automated, you really need to make sure, also in an automated manner, that, for example, the results from your dependency checks are already treated before something goes into production. Because otherwise, the scanners just find things, but nobody cares about it, and it goes to production anyways. And then this, yeah, nobody has anything of that. So that's basically it. My key messages for today: security is more important than ever. So we should also really take care of it, even though we have very short release cycles. It's of course a challenge because time is tight, but there are ways to get proper security ensured. And especially because we are able to automate a lot of these security tasks, especially the verification things. And if you combine this smartly with some manual checks, then we usually have a really good coverage and find most of the security vulnerabilities. Yeah, my personal recommendation is really start trying out some lightweight, easy form of threat modeling. Just needs to be a brainstorming of maybe 2-3 hours, and you will see, you will have your whole team aligned and get this awareness for security. Everybody knows, okay, we need to take care of this and that, and it will be a huge gain in security for your application. And yeah, just use secure coding guidelines as checklists, because it's super hard to have everything in your head and remember everything, how to do it right. So it's always nice to have a checklist where you can just see, okay, yeah, these 5 things I need to do, and then it's good. So as I promised, here are some resources if you're interested in the topic, so you can dig deeper. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I will hand over to Walter and be happy or looking forward to our discussion afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And thank you very much for your presentation. As we saw already, Daniel speak a little bit about security. And now we are talking again about security, but a sector a little bit more specific that is regarding coding. I am senior software developer at niceshops, and we're dealing every day with secure coding. But before we start with the main topic of this presentation, let's see why and the benefits of software development. Software development allows business to increase profit, to reduce cost, and increase also productivity. We know the advantages the software development brought in our digital era. We know we are dealing every day with application and with other business process. But if we are looking closely to this picture, we can notice there's something is missing. And of course, we are speaking about security. It will be not a problem if security will be only missing on this picture. But of course, the lack of security plays a vital role nowadays and a crucial aspect that cost, of course, increasing money for the company. We can see that yearly $1.3 trillion are used against security, so for vulnerability are the main cost. $140,000 cost per application, and 83% of the attacks causes disruption into the business. IBM, these charts created by IBM in a statistical report shows that every sector is involved, causing, of course, alarming consequences. I would like to show you, of course, some famous vulnerabilities that affected numerous web applications and other applications in the last couple of years. Log4Shell, maybe you already heard about it, and was discovered in 2022 in Apache Log4j library. It was extremely severe because this library was embedded in a several amount of application that, of course, it was caused. The main reason of this vulnerability was that improper validation was made, and an attacker could craft a malicious string into the log and could execute remote code on the victim systems. Another vulnerability that I would like to mention is the Folina vulnerability. This also allowed remote code execution, and this was a zero-day vulnerabilities. Zero-day vulnerability, if you maybe already know, are the most critical one because it doesn't exist at the point is discovered the vulnerability. There is no patch and there is no there is no way to get rid of the vulnerabilities. And this, of course, was also caused about improper validation and led an attacker to affect remote code execution. Just only the victim could open the affected docs file, and it was done. Another important vulnerability that affects our browsers was the type confusion vulnerability in V8 engine JavaScript. This was caused about the complexity of the system. The high complexity, of course, lead in a poor validation of the source code, and this misinterpretation of type lead also in several vulnerability that allow the malicious user to execute arbitrary code inside the victim system. And last but not last, we had a Heartbleed vulnerability in the FAR 2013 that was affected the OpenSSL library, one of the most used today, that ensure TLS encryption on our website also. And here also was caused about different mix-up of vulnerabilities like improper validation of input, and also the memory leak in the system, and was extremely severe because the attackers could make an exploit without leaving trace. Yes, we heard already from Daniel about OWASP. OWASP is an no-profit organization to try to to try to sensibilize the developers to apply security, and is providing every years some here. So we can see the last one was in 2021, and the previous was in 2017. Is no profit organization. Of course, they do what they can, and they provide a ranking of the vulnerabilities, of course, to show how the landscape of cybersecurity is evolving every time. In front of course, of all these vulnerabilities and this exploit increase for business, also the need to more security, to apply more security mechanism and to apply more security in our business, to allow, of course, to increase the trust of the customers, and of course to reduce the cost produced from vulnerability, as we see from the previous slides. And of course, one principle is applying secure coding. How we can define secure coding is as a best practice of writing software that is resistant of security vulnerabilities and exploit. Of course, like said like this, it looks simple, but involves, of course, security principle and more mechanism, more sophisticated. But before we are delving inside these principles, why secure coding is important? Of course, we saw also from the slide of Daniel, code remains the core of our application. It's the first step that allows us to create software. And of course, secure coding enables us to protect our software shown in the beginning step, and of course increase not only the possibility to produce more secure software and to prevent from vulnerabilities, but also to prevent exploit that could increase the cost of our business. Now let's delve inside the security principle that I already told before. The first one, we can start with input validations. The principle is just one, is never trust the users. Never trust what is coming from the user. That's why we have to execute and we have implement input validation server-side, so on the trusted system, that allowed not only prevent injection of malicious code, but also prevent the application to crash after invalid input or improper input. On the other side of the coin, we have, of course, output encoding. Output encoding is because it's not only for what is coming inside in our system, it's also about the representation of the information. And output encoding allows us, of course, to show the information in the correct way, also between different systems, and prevent also the execution of malicious code that could be injected from our input fields. Sorry. Another part, of course, that involved secure coding practices is authentication. Of course, when you land on our website and you want to log in to buy some things, here is play a vital role the authentication. It allows, of course, only authorized user to access to a page or an area of our application. And of course, we will not implement authentication on our public website or our public sites, but only on the area that we're interested in. And of course, as I said before, username and password. Password plays a vital role for authentication. And password management, of course, should be also made in the proper way. We had to implement it using proper algorithm that could hash our password and don't left in clear text in our system. Because after a data leak, an attacker could, of course, gain all information on all the password of our system. And we don't want that this happened, of course. Let's move on with error handling, because, of course, even the most secure application is encoding in errors. And doing it in the proper way play a vital role in our application. Yes, because if we don't gently show an error message to the user and we show sensible information of our application, we could give vital information, so sensible information to the attacker that could use to exploit in the future our application. And session management is also, of course, vital for our application. It's represent the short the management between client and user, and the identifier should always be created by a cryptographic algorithm. You don't have to implement by yourself because, of course, they should have this identifier a level of randomness that avoid the possibility to inject to session injection or a session ejecting, for example. Another point, of course, of secure coding practice that's is worth to say is access control. You can image your application like a castle, and access control play like the gatekeeper of your castle, because they let you, of course, provide to let you introduce your user only in specific area that are allowed for, and not see or visit other pages and access to resources that you don't want to do that are accessible. And least privilege principle is a little add-on to access control, because you want that your application and your user let only the minimum privilege when you are executing some operation. Because if you are thinking if an attacker gain the possibility as an administrator in your system, could execute any kind of operation and any kind of action in your system. And of course, this list of principles are really beautiful for us, but to embed them at the very beginning step of the software development, we have to integrate it with a technique, security by design. Security by design, of course, ensure on the early step of software development to integrate this principle and increasingly to improve the security of the application. And it's a little bit should be created in our mindset. We have to change our mindset, that then we are able to apply the security by design and the list of the principles that I showed you before. And to close, we have the KEYS principle that I think everybody knows, and keep it simple, stupid, of course, and high complexity. There's always in some things that we cannot control really well. And if our process, our application is keep it simple, then we are able also to prevent put the possibility that could be attacked or could encounter in errors. But of course, not only security principles are helpful in software development. There are also tools that we can use to increase the performance of the teams and also the quality of the software. And I already Daniel showed you before. There we have a static code analysis tools that can scan your source code without executing, and they can find additional security vulnerabilities that maybe you oversee from code review. We have also code liners that are specific for each language. It also here identifies, sorry, identifies also also vulnerabilities and also give you the right white line to create your code. And at last one, of course, dependency scanner. I also Daniel already speak about it because we don't have to only take care about the software we are writing, but we have to take care also to the software we are embedding in our application. Yes, because third-party library are extremely useful in software development lifecycle. We all know developers are really lazy, and but at the end, why we should reinvent every time the wheels? Of course, we can use third-party software that can provide functionalities we can integrate in our application. But of course, we have also to pay attention to this third-party library because they could include vulnerabilities and mistakes, code errors that could, of course, be dangerous for our application. And you have to choose, of course, wisely the third-party library that you want to integrate in your system. I advise you, of course, to check it out for updates every time. And at the end, if you minimize the dependencies in your system, of course, you minimize the overhead to check it out every time about security patches, updates, and so on. But we discovered a lot of security principles, security tools, but how we can properly integrate it in Agile development. Of course, one of the first part is to make it embedded in your development teams. It should be like habit. It should be something that you are used to do as you're writing the code. And if you make security as foundation in your teams, in your development teams, you don't have the possibility. You reduce the possibility of creating vulnerable code. And as already Daniel said, of course, the security champions are, of course, the most important one in every team because they have, can I say, the task also to provide the right information to the teammates and at the end to build secure software. But of course, there are in the Agile manifest, there are a lot of frameworks and there are several literature that explain how you can integrate your secure coding on the secure practice in Agile development. But in my opinion, one of the most easier way to integrate security in your software development lifecycle is on user story based. User story are, of course, one of the littlest we can say is a feature or functionality that should be implemented, and is one of the littlest part about the software development in Agile development. And if it's every security requirements is already clear inside the user story, not only your development team is aware about security, but also stakeholders and PO, so product owners. And I would like to show you a little example for what I'm saying. Here we are seeing a user story without security. We can read as a registered user so that I can easily access to my account information. I can log in using my username and password. Acceptance criteria, user can enter a username and password. System validates username and password against stored credential. Upon successful validation, user is granted access to their account information. There's nothing wrong with this user story. Is everything clear? We can see that everything is written. But of course, here is a little bit risky because there is no indication about security. If you're thinking 1 week sprints, 2 week sprint, the team is totally focused on implementing the functionality and implemented what is written inside the user story. And this, of course, can leak most of the time in vulnerabilities, because of course, the developers in this case maybe will be all just focused to implement an input form with a username and password, without a screen validation, without using password policies that increase, of course, the length and the complexity of the password, and other aspects that could involve security. But now let me show another version of the same user story, but with security aspects. As a registered user, so that I can securely access my account information and minimize the risk of unauthorized access, I can log in using a strong username and password combination. Acceptance criteria, user can enter a username that meets minimum length requirement. User can enter a password that meets minimum strength requirement. The system enforce a maximum number of login attempts with specific time frame, and so on. We can see that we have visibly security aspect in our user story, and that, of course, increase also the sensibilization of our product owner and our stakeholders, because not only development teams should be aware about security, but all the people that are involved in software development. And this is one of the most easiest way, before you are getting to search about a framework, security framework that you want to integrate in your Agile development. In my opinion, this is the most easiest one. And of course, we know that the refinement process can allow the developer to introduce and to aware product owner and stakeholders about security. Now we are almost at the end of our journey in secure coding present. And yes, we saw how much it cost the lack of security in coding and the web application, on the application in general. We saw a list of security principles that we can apply to increase security in our application, in our software. And another advice, of course, that also Daniel gives to you is following OWASP. It provides a security checklist. It provides a lot of security information that you can follow. And of course, you can start by now to integrate the security aspect in your Agile development. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer you after that at your questions. Thank you.
Perfect. So while Daniel sets up the technical part, I want to say also introduction from my side. Hi, I'm Jelena, one of the co-organizers of this meetup, and I will be the one today guiding the Q&A session. So in case you still have some questions you didn't have chance to ask, now is the chance to scan the QR code. It's here on the screen or somewhere around. And we will just be doing a conversation. So with our two speakers today, maybe I stand on the other side to see it properly and also ask you questions. So also if you have some follow-ups, please use Slido. That's the easiest way for a hybrid setup to make it fluent and that everyone hears the questions and the answers. You have the mics nearby, so that should work. So top voted question for today we have is there are a lot of small companies don't have resources for dedicated security roles. So basically we understand that security is very important, but the resources are limited. Any good playbooks to follow in case a company gets hacked? Maybe Daniel, I think this is potentially more in your area. Like,
the question is basically if there is playbooks.
Your microphone's still muted.
uh-huh.
Test, test, test. Perfect. So,
If company is hacked, what
yeah,
to do?
it's already hacked. So this is basically every company needs to have their own emergency playbooks. There is no default, because every company works different, right? Every company has different things that are really important to them and have different things that they need to get things going again. So it's really hard to say, like, okay, do these 3 steps and you're safe after an attack, because also there are like tons of different kinds of attacks. You have denial of service attacks where somebody just shoots down your servers. You have ransomware attacks where somebody encrypts your data and asks for some ransom. These are, if you just take these 2, it's like completely different story what you need to do basically. So the best practice that you usually recommend to do is to define a set of like 5, 6, 7 scenarios that would really hurt and impact your business. For example, my servers are not available, my data is encrypted, data which I store gets leaked, stuff like that. And then define some steps that you would take then in order to get your business running again, to prevent further damage and stuff like that. So this is also for bigger corporations. This is actually mandatory by some laws. They need to do this, and it's also a really good idea for small companies to sit down for a moment and think about that stuff. And also there is an option for cyber insurances. They are usually not too expensive actually, and they cover really a lot of like financial damage basically. And they also give you certain requirements you need to fulfill in order to that they even give you this protection. So basically, if you go to one of those insurance companies and you say, okay, I would like to have cybersecurity insurance, they say, okay, you will pay us X amount of euros each month, and you need to do this, this, and that, and there will for sure be some emergency plan included in this. And then if something still happens to you, then they will cover basically for the financial loss, and they will also send you somebody to help you reestablish your business. So if you don't want to like get some consulting companies helping you establishing this stuff, then it could be a really good idea to reach out to some insurance companies actually and ask for offers for these cybersecurity insurances, and then they basically also guide you a little bit through this process. I hope this answers the question.
I hope so too. Can we use Slido, please? Just because. Okay, super quick one, then I hand you to Mike.
Thank you. I think the most important thing is that you have one person being responsible for the process in the company. Yeah. So if something happens, you have to, the whole employees and everyone has to know who to address and who takes care of the problem.
Yeah, it's a good
That's
point.
the most important thing, I think.
Yeah. It's again this thing, if nobody is responsible for anything, then it won't be happening, right? So if you have somebody who is like in charge of security and in charge for incident response or business continuity management, then, and everybody knows that, then they know, okay, something happens. Usually in these emergency plans, you also write down some indications how your employees can actually identify that something happened, because this is sometimes also not that easy. So you basically write down some indicators for that and what they need to do then. Yeah. and then you should be able to properly and quickly respond to incidents.
So thank you. But following up, there is another question. It's very much related. So we understand it's important. We understand that basically there is no one checklist for everyone. So every company is special, and there are some like insurance and some options, but still it's resources. It still requires some money.
Yeah.
And the question is how to persuade management to put some investment into security. So any selling points you could
So
give us?
so actually, for a lot of companies, the new NIS2 regulation from the European Union will be a big motivator for our management.
Can
Because,
you explain what it is?
yeah,
For
it is basically a regulation by the European Union which drives to, or which wants to establish some basic cybersecurity standards throughout the European Union. And like these requirements are mandatory for like critical infrastructure of the member states, so that everything in the European Union works as it should work, basically, and the countries work. And they are also mandatory for a lot of businesses which kind of support those critical infrastructures, basically. And then the important thing here is that this regulation also says that all these organizations, which are already quite a lot, need to ensure the security of their supply chain. So if your company delivers any product to these other companies, then you basically also need to do all of that, because otherwise they cannot buy from you anymore. So for these who are directly affected from this regulation, there are basically also penalties for CEOs and management in person if they don't comply with that. And for the other businesses, there will be this factor of you cannot provide products anymore to these companies, which can be like a huge thing. So this is from like the law perspective. And the other thing is basically there are a lot of awareness. There's a lot of awareness material out there. So it's really effective to, one of my first slides, I had this informationisbeautiful.net. You can find there a lot of information graphics on what actually happened to other companies. Because if you get this awareness in people, like what this can actually cause in their business, then sometimes the motivation rises. And also it can be a good idea if like this comparison with others doesn't help, to really break down once, like to and kind of write down, okay, we have these 3 critical services. What would actually happen if something gets attacked there and is not available, or data gets stolen? So try to kind of figure out what this would mean for your business and make this clear to your management. And if this doesn't help, then okay, then they're taking the risk. This is basically always the fundamental of everything should be some kind of risk management. So very often management is not aware of what could actually happen. So I see this actually often at my customers, that IT staff says, yeah, we are aware that this and that is not secure and we have this and this problems, but we don't have any resources for that. And then we tell them, yeah, you should do this and that, and they, yeah, we know, but don't have resources. Then a few years later, something happens. And then there is some crisis management, and of course there's lessons learned, and management says, yeah, what happened there? Why did this happen? And they said, yeah, because we had this and these problems, but we didn't have money. And very often management says, yeah, why haven't you told me that this risk exists? We would have given you money. So very often it's just a lack of knowledge what could actually happen. So it's very important to make these risks transparent. Tell them, hey, we have this list of risks identified. We actually need money for that. And if we don't invest this money, then this and that can happen. Are you willing to accept this and carry this risk? If they still say, yes, we accept this risk and we are okay with that, then it's up to them, right? It's their company, they can make this decision. but they should be aware of it. And this is basically your task or the task of IT people to who understand those risks to make them visible to management.
If I may add also, so not just showing the consequences and saying these are the risks, but also what would in their language.
Exactly.
So not some technical, probably heavy, and but more like ideally some kind of calculation. What would be the loss for the company in a some money-wise
Exactly. This is something a real
parameter.
challenge to
Put
communicate between these two languages.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So basically, we are safe because regulation is coming, and everyone will put focus into it. I would maybe ask this first to Walter, and then maybe Daniel, you can chime in a bit. Security champions, do you have them in your team, in niceshops, and are they a bottleneck? Like only they care about security and no one else thinks, or is that much interested into it?
No, yes, I will take, of course, as example, our company, for example, we are divided in several development teams. We have 4, and in each team is, how we can say, is balanced, so that any teams have at least one senior software developer that can support, of course, the junior software developer, and they are a little bit, how we can say, not only the controller, so how we can say, it's always take care about your team. It's always not only writing code only because you have to do it. It's also something about passion that you have to integrate in your daily business. You have to be aware that you don't write coding just for fun, but because our process are people that are relying on the software you are writing. And of course, the senior developer should also have, I would say, this role to take the junior together and bring to the main goal of the software development has, was creating software, robust software, capable software, secure software. And of course, the path of a senior developer is also long, and it's always to stay up to date, take security training, read about other stuff about, but it's part of our profession. We have to stay always up to date. If you're out of date, you're out. And of course, it involves a little bit responsibility of the senior developers, as of course more responsibility in the team, and you should have also the senior developer should take care and carry out also this task. So to make sensibilization in the team. I personally in my team make also the most code review, and I always pointing if something is insecure programmed, and I always give a reason. I don't just pointing, this is wrong, what are you doing? Look, you make a good job, but we can improve this part of code because it's not working properly here you make, because if you put this input, blah, 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 and so on, it's causing an error. It's insecure because of this. You have always to explain, because if the people in front of you also don't have a learning effect, it always continues and make the same mistakes. And we can learn about also from other mistakes. We saw all mistakes because of vulnerabilities and create disruption in software. We can also learn not only from our mistake, yes, of course. I hope that answered the question.
I think you have a good point in this sensibilization thing. So also, if you have Walter in your team, and this guy is always again rising this topic of security and saying, here you need to also consider this, and you need to also consider this. At some point, people it's always present then. And
Yeah.
when Walter is maybe sick for a week and they write something, they will think about him and like, ah, Walter will probably tell us next week. So better do it this anyways.
Right, it's right. Like you are getting usual to
Used
write coding,
Yeah.
integrating security mechanisms, you get also usual. It's becoming automatically.
But if you don't have somebody who gives these impulses, then it just gets forgotten by time.
Okay, so it's not about knowledge bottleneck, it's more about face of these impulses and this passion that the security
Exactly,
champions
community
bring.
of practice. So you have to provide the knowledge to your team, and also if it's also out in the entire company, if it's necessary. Yes.
Yeah, spreading it.
And if you just do it like once, if you have some, let's say you have one security training for this team, then maybe everybody, if this training was good, then everybody is kind of excited for security, and for the next 2-3 sprints, they really follow these practices, and then it gets less and less, and people forget about it. But if there's somebody like dedicatedly responsible for it and raises this again and again, then it becomes a habit.
Okay, I believe we covered that question. The second one, I also think it was covered in Walter's presentation, but maybe if you have something to add, it says like how to ensure a team actually follows the security guidelines. So you talked a lot about integrating them into acceptance criteria. Now we talked about like writing in pull requests, comments, explaining why. Anything else, any additional practice or like making sure the team follows?
Of course, one suggestion so that we also actually we are applying in niceshops. Each part of code is implemented should be reviewed, should be created a merge request, and after a really attention code review can be approved and then merged in the main branch of our software. Of course, there are OWASP provides already security guidelines, security checklist. This is of course one of the starting points that and not expert, for example, could follow. And of course, it's also to understand for which perspective is made the question. Of course, if it's, for example, the CAO of a company, or is a developer in a team, is a stakeholder, it depends. I can differently answer at this question if I maybe get a little bit more information about the point of view, because there are different aspects, of course, about answer this question. You can, if you are, for example, a manager, of course, you are getting to hire a security expert that can help you in your organization. It should not be 20 security experts. It depends also on the size of the organization. It depends of different factors, of course. And nowadays, if you don't know a little bit of basic of security practice, is really dangerous than go inside software development to creating a business, because it's not really, there are attackers can happen every day, every minute. We have a monitoring system that highlights how many attack our e-commerce, our online shops, and there are this so-called the script kiddies, and they want always to make attacks to your system, and if you're on the basic protection that you can protect your system, if you're not able to protect your system, you're in danger. That's why I hope that I answered the question, but and of course different possibilities to increase the knowledge.
Yeah.
I
I believe it was covered. If not, please ask our speakers.
I don't want to make a promotion, but I also studied at Kapfenberg FA Ioneum, and they provide the IT and mobile security studies, master study, and I
You
I can
recommend
say
it?
that yes, it was amazing because you can see in different aspects of software development how security can be applied. And there is also, it covered also security management. It's not only about code, it's also about management in the,
picture.
yes, of course.
Okay, just to also give chances to other questions, I would proceed. Very concrete one, how to raise passion for security. So how to get it sparkled, how to get interested. What was your story? How did you fell into it? How did you found this?
So,
Because first from your point of view and then how to
I
raise
think
it.
I have a little bit of a different story because I started with that quite early. After I had some basic education as a developer in Hotel Wiener Neustadt, I then wanted to just specialize in one specific field and chose security. I have no idea why.
But we can say,
turned out to be a good choice.
One selling point can be if you want to be expert in something, this is a very prospect,
absolutely.
concrete area to go into.
And I think if you really want to raise passion for security in technical people, then it's a very good idea to attend some, let's say, awareness training with live hacking demos, or just get into some real hacking examples on YouTube. There are a lot of tutorials for that. Because if you can see what like really small bugs in code can have for a huge impact if you misuse them or abuse them correctly, this is really amazing, and this gets it's real fun. Yeah. So you can really get down this rabbit hole and get a lot of passion for security when you see what you can actually do with vulnerable code. So
and for non-techies like me, how do I?
For non-techies, it depends. If there is like a little bit of this technical fascination, then also like awareness, good made awareness trainings can really do something. And if people are like just pure business guys, then it's usually the numbers. Just making visible what big security incidents can mean for a company, how they can destroy companies, can kind of force this passion. Want to add something?
No, yes, of course, security is a huge a sector. I can say you can make, of course, a web application, catch of the flag, and also side channel attack. So if you are interested in hardware, because it's also security on hardware, and it's even possible, for example, to have the key to open your car. You can easily with some device copy the information of the signal and reproduce and open a car if it's not properly secure. There are a lot of stuff that are available. Of course, if there is security mechanism, you are not able to do that. But it depends where you were going. And of course, as Daniel said, I will just to enhance what he said. There are a lot of hacking platform, and you can try it out and look it if you enjoy it.
Maybe one thing to add, there is, if somebody really wants to just try out a little bit of hacking, you can check out the OWASP Choose Shop, like from the OWASP organization. It's Choose Shop is some like demo web application. It's a Choose Shop where you can order choose. And it's full of vulnerabilities and some challenges, how to find those vulnerabilities and exploit them. And with also some game board and game statistics, so with a little bit of gamification behind it. So you can see in kind of a protected environment how hacking basically works and what you can do with it. So this could be a nice starting point if you want to dig deeper in this topic a little bit.
Okay, so juice shops, that's what I remember. Okay, I know that there are a lot of questions, but we are also running a bit out of time. And Jürgen, you want to do the closing? Should I have one more, or you can
I
decide?
guess one more is fine, yes.
One more, but not too extensive. Very concrete if possible. How are you handling third-party library updates, and is it driven by security scans? Any good practices to keep track of them?
Yes. So basically, there are a lot of different scanners for that. And most of them you can integrate in your IDE, in your CI/CD pipeline, and in all your tool chain, basically. So, and the earlier in the development process you start using them, the easier it is. So for example, if you have, I don't know, some Eclipse running or some VS Code, you can add one of those scanners. And when you do some import, it directly shows you, hey, you just try to import an old version of this library. It has some vulnerabilities. Use version 3 instead. And then you just need to click there and say, okay, use version 3, which makes it a lot more easier than if you discover it when it's already on production. And also, very important in my opinion, like besides that, this is just to make it really easy for developers to use the right versions at the moment. Then you should always include those scans in the CI/CD pipelines to make sure when you want to ship something to production that it warns you in case you have any outdated libraries in place at this moment. And then it really depends on how you actually have your deployments running. So if you, a lot of my customers, for example, they destroy all their containers anyways each week and kind of rebuild them. And while rebuilding and deploying them, they check for the libraries. Then you don't need any in production scanning, basically. If you don't do that, and if your containers or your applications run for months, then it's also a good idea to really keep track of the libraries that you have in production and if you need to do any changes, basically. So yes, there are a lot of scanners. There are like free ones. For example, if you use GitHub, there's actually free scanners on GitHub that you can just use. There are also some from OWASP, and there are a lot of paid ones. Always depends on which technologies you use and which toolchain you have. But I think for every setup, there is some scanner available, and it's really a good idea to start with that.
Anything to add, Walter?
Yes, as a developer, I can just advise, like I said in my presentation, keep the third-party library, so choose wisely the third-party library, minimize the dependencies. More dependencies you have in your application, more risk are rising. And we, for example, we have a 2 weeks cycle in our Scrum process. Our sprint is during 2 weeks, and each team's at the beginning of the sprints is responsible. So we rotate it every times, and at the beginning of each sprint, every team is responsible to execute security scan. For example, on JavaScript, you have Yarn is a dependencies manager and can help you, for example, to check. In JavaScript is, I mention it because it's one of the most used language nowadays in web application, but are a lot of other tools that you can use it. And of course, you don't have to pick the first one library because it can accomplish immediately on your task. You have to see, of course, there are issues. How much is rated the library? How much is maintained? So if it's not maintained, you can throw it away. You don't have to integrate in your system. You have always to take care any little aspect and check it out if it can be after a risk for your businesses, for your application.
Okay, I hope that answered the question. We can hand over to Jürgen, who will do the closing. So,
Perfect. Promise I will keep the closing short. So first of all, thank you again, Daniel and Walter, for the presentation. Thank you, niceshops, for hosting us once again. And of course, last but not least, thanks for all of you to come here and enjoy some time with us and see some nice presentation. Before I close, just one more thing. We have the next meetup on the 18th of July. More details will come shortly. So someone is already nodding, so maybe our potential new hosts. And thank you very much, and enjoy the food afterwards downstairs. And the remote participants also stay connected. Walter and Daniel will quickly connect with you that you can answer some unanswered questions and then continue on with the mingling part there. Thank you very much, everyone.